press briefing from... Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this joint press briefing from the UN headquarters. My name is May Yaqub, and I'm the head of advocacy and outreach at OHRLS, and I will be your moderator today. We are honored to have with us two distinguished speakers. Ms. Rabab Fatima, you are the Secretary General of LLDC3 conference and also USG and High Representative of the least developed country, landlocked developing countries and small island developing state. Also with us, Her Excellency, Ms. Aksultan Atayeva, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Turkmenistan to the United Nations. Without further ado, I invite Ms. Rabab Fatima to deliver her remark. Madam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, May. Good afternoon, distinguished members of the media, dear friends. I thank you for joining us today for the briefing on the upcoming third United Nations Conference of the Landlocked Developing Countries that will be held in Awaza, Turkmenistan from the 5th to the 8th of August with a pre-conference day on the 4th of August. And the purpose of gathering here today is not only to share updates on the conference preparations, but also to put the spotlight on a group of 32 countries that are too often overlooked. The landlocked developing countries, the LLDCs, home to over 570 million people. Half of them are in Africa, and half of them are also LDCs. Their development challenges are profound and persistent, rooted in one unchangeable reality, that they have no direct access to the sea. And this isolation drives up, for them, isolation from global markets, drives up trade costs by up to 74% and doubles exports times compared to their coastal neighbors, the coastal economies. And these countries, these 32 countries, despite making up 7% of the world's population, they only account for about 1.2% of the global merchandise trade and less than 1% of global exports. So in that context, the upcoming conference, the LLDC3, is a pivotal opportunity to reverse this trajectory. It offers a once-in-a-decade opportunity. These countries actually have their conference once in a decade to reshape the development path of LLDCs by mobilizing international support and partnerships and by placing their needs firmly on the global development agenda. The conference is expected to be truly inclusive, a multi-stakeholder event, bringing together heads of states and governments, ministers, parliamentarians, but also other stakeholders, the private sector, the civil society, youth, and of course, from the UN system and other regional and international organizations. The UN Secretary General will lead the UN delegation. He is, of course, it's a UN meeting, so he has sent out invitations for this, and he will be reaffirming the UN system's full commitment to the LLDC agenda. The President of the General Assembly, the President of ECOSOC, among others, will also be participating. The conference is anchored in the Awaza Program of Action, bold and forward-looking blueprint for the decade 2024 to 2034, and which was adopted by consensus by the General Assembly in December. It identifies the key strategic areas of the LLDCs, and I will not go into them because I think we, in the interest of time, but I think we have provided folders with details. And these 5 priority areas have been translated into action, and for that, the Program of Action also identifies 5 flagship deliverables for the LLDCs, and these include regional agricultural research hubs, infrastructure investment finance facilities. The infrastructure investment gap is huge, running into trillions for them. The UN Secretary General's high-level panel on freedom of transit. Again, transit is a big issue for them, so Secretary General has been asked to set up a high-level panel, a dedicated work program under the auspices of the WTO, and a formal negotiating body under the UNFCCC. And I'm very happy to report to you that, this process has already been completed. They have all applied, and the LLDCs, for the first time, they will be going into the next COP as a negotiating body like the other vulnerable groups of countries. Allow me also now to share some of the key highlights of the program of the conference. There will be, of course, plenary sessions, the intergovernmental track. That's not only the plenary sessions, but there will be 5 high-level parallel roundtables that will be taking place on 5 thematic areas centered around the 5 strategic, the priorities of the LLDCs. And this will be an opportunity not only for the member states, but other stakeholders to also come forward and speak there. In parallel, there will be dedicated stakeholder forums, which I mentioned. This is a multi-stakeholder meeting, so it's important. So there'll be a private sector forum where we're expecting the investors in private sector from not only the LLDCs, but also their partner and transit countries to be there. There'll be a parliamentary forum bringing together the parliamentarians from the LLDCs and other partner countries, a civil society forum, and a youth forum. In addition, there'll be a day-long ministerial meeting of the South-South Cooperation. There will be a women leaders meeting. And we also expect to launch there the LLDC Global Business Network, the first ever such platform to connect businesses across landlocked, transit, and partner countries. Dear colleagues, to facilitate your reporting, we have made several resources available. There's an official LLDC3 mobile app, which provides real-time updates, schedules, and participants' information. A conference information note, which is also accessible. I believe the QR code has been provided. There will be media center with all facilities there, with internet, high-speed internet, etc. And we also there'll be live feeds via the UN Web TV. There'll be regular press briefings and highlights and interview opportunities for key participants. Media accreditation remains open through the UN Media Accreditation Unit until the 17th of July. We have already received some registration from some members of the media from here, and we hope that more will be coming. At the end of the day, dear colleagues, it is about the millions. It's about the people. The LLDC story is about the story about the people of the LLDCs. It's about the millions of children in the LLDCs who lack internet or digital tools. About 39% of the people in the LLDCs, the 32 LLDCs, have access to the internet. The farmers who cannot get their goods to market because of poor roads or transit facilities, and the entrepreneurs whose dreams are held back by border delays or limited access to funding. And we need to bring these human stories to the world, and we count on you to do that. Your reports can help amplify the voices of more than 500 million people and ensure that geography does not determine destiny. We look forward to seeing you in Awaza and to your continued partnership in advancing this vital agenda. It's very, very important. These are the countries on whom the fate, the success of the Agenda 2030 depends, because these are the countries which are being left behind. May, who leads the communications team in my office, is there if you need more information. And we can even discuss about your participation. They're facilitating your participation there. So let me rest it here and hand the microphone over to Her Excellency Ambassador Ateyeva, the host of the conference. Ambassador.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Under Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. We are just less than 1 month away from the 3rd United Nations Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries, LLDC3, to be held in Awaza, Turkmenistan. This will be a landmark gathering at the level of heads of state and government, and we are proud to host it on the Caspian Sea coast in Turkmenistan. Let me begin by acknowledging the leadership of USG Rabab Fatima and the close collaboration between OHR LLS and the government of Turkmenistan in making this event possible. I know you want to know more detail, and let me start first from venue and logistic. Awaza is a beautiful recreation area located at the Caspian Sea and hosts several luxury hotels and resorts where the participants will be staying. Venue and logistic. We have made strong progress on the ground in Avaza. The conference venue is being equipped with high-speed internet, interpretation booths, media zones, and bilateral meeting rooms. Hotels are renovated. Airport and shuttle services will be fully managed by the host government. All registered participants will receive free visas, and the link for online attendance and the visa form is already available on the official LLDC3 website. Flight connections to and from Avaza or Turkmenbashi and major hubs including Istanbul, Dubai, Bangkok. All tickets available on the websites indicated in the information note for participants. The host country also accommodates high intensity of flights from Ashgabat to Avaza and back for the conference period. Participants can expect full catering arrangements, including daily lunches, coffee breaks, and evening receptions. Health services, including a medical center and emergency support, will be available on site. Currency exchange and ITM services will be provided at the hotels and main venues. The weather in Avaza in August is typically sunny and warm, around 28 to 35 degrees Celsius, so light clothes, sunglasses, and swimming clothes are recommended. Political declaration. Parallel to logistics, Turkmenistan as a host country facilitated and just yesterday concluded negotiations on the Avaza political declaration. I appreciate the active engagement shown by all member states, and we are confident that this document will ensure a strong outcome from Avaza. Program and participation. LLDC3 will not be business as usual. Alongside plenary sessions, we will host major side events and dedicated forums such as youth, civil society, private sector, parliamentary, and others. On August 6th, the connectivity track will spotlight critical issues around digital links, transport, and transit. We invite all delegations, stakeholders, and development partners to the co-organized side events and shape this agenda through your contributions. Culture and hospitality. To ensure a memorable and welcoming environment, Turkmenistan is organizing a rich cultural program, a gala reception, evening concerts, national cuisine festivals, exhibitions, and souvenir bazaars. Tourism services and guided tours will be offered along the Caspian Sea coast with shopping and hospitality zones set up near the venue. Dear friends, this is once in a decade opportunity. LLDC3 will help define how we implement the Avaza program of action for the decade 2024-2034. We look forward to welcoming you to Avaza for transformative at conference that put Landlocked at the heart.
Thank you, Ambassador Atayeva, and thank you, Madam. We will now open the floor for questions. Please state your name and affiliation before asking your question. Let's begin. Gabriel.
Hello, my name is Gabriel Elizondo from Al Jazeera English News Channel. Thank you very much for the briefing on this important conference. I have two questions, if you don't mind. one for Ms. Fatima and then one for the ambassador. First one is, you mentioned how half of the LLDCs are in Africa, which is a really striking statistic. Will there be any special emphasis on Africa, given the high number of the countries that are based there? Or how do you foresee that shaping up in the conference? And also, since this only happens once every decade, correct? Is there any thought about keeping the momentum going and how you keep that momentum going? Because 10 years is such a long time in between such important conferences. And then for Madam Ambassador, for your country, how will you judge how successful the conference was for your country after it is concluded? What are the parameters
Yes, the focus will certainly be there. I mean, initially, they're planting in Africa for the first time, but for some unforeseen reasons that didn't take place. But there is an emphasis, if you look at the program of action also, there is an emphasis on countries which are particularly vulnerable, especially those in Africa. We are seeing also very good response from African countries in terms of coming, not only the LLDCs, but other African countries at large to be there. And we are also expecting, especially from the transit countries and others in Africa, to be there. There are some good models and examples that are there in Africa in terms of corridors, linking, etc. They are now more into using the coinage of not landlocked, but landlinked. So we hope that some of those good practices, some of those good models, even from Africa and the others, will be coming there for us. So that is there, and especially having high-level representation coming from Africa, many leaders coming from Africa, I hope the spotlight will be certainly there on African countries because half of them are there. Indeed, I mean, this is a challenge. It's a 10 years program, but if mid-term and long-term initiatives and programs, these programs of actions are also, we deal with 3 groups of countries, and they are exactly the same model that we follow for each of them. We have tried to closely align them to also the SDGs and the Agenda 2030. So, of course, this program of action will be going beyond and negotiating the new program of action. Of course, they were also taking lessons of what was not going right with the Agenda 2030 and to see how it can be more specifically addressing those issues. And this program of action also had the Pact of the Future with them, so they could reflect and align both with the priorities of Agenda 2030 and that. But yes, how taking it forward? We have robust mechanism. There is an annual meeting during the high-level week of the General Assembly when the ministers meet here to go over, take stock of where things are on the program of action. There is an annual report on the implementation of the program of action by the Secretary General, which is also goes to this General Assembly. So there is an annually a reflection and stock taking of where things are. This time we are also, monitoring and evaluation always happens to be a weakness. So we are trying to put into place a full-blown results framework, engaging all UN entities who are involved. So that should be there also to measure how we are taking forward. Secondly, we also have a very good network of what we call the national focal points from each of these countries. So we bring them every year we bring them together. We are trying to put together toolkits on how they can integrate the new program of action into their national plans and actions. So we don't want the program of action to be in isolation here, but a document which is a living document integrated within their own national plans of actions. We are doing the same thing. This is the plan now. This is the model which is now commonly being followed in the UN. We are also trying to see to it that all the UN entities, the funds and programs and others also try to integrate the country. So these are quite exhaustive mechanisms that we are going to have. In addition, we have biennial meetings at the regional level with the regional economic commissions, again to look at how these to take stock of where things are heading. Then there's a midterm review after 5 years, again to take stock of where things are. But finally, and I'm quite excited about it, we have some very good deliverables there. Very key asks. One of them is like, they want document that climate priorities have found a place. So the LLDCs also realized that they should be actually also a negotiating group in the UNFCCC, which they were not. I mean, LDCs are, SIDs are, but LLDCs were not there. So one of the asks in the process was to see if they can also be a negotiating group in UNFCCC. So there was a process, and this process has been completed. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, at the next COP, the LLDCs will also be negotiating there as a group. So that is already one of the deliverables that has been taken care of. Or in WTO, to see how better integrated the LLDCs are in the discussions there on trade and transit in the WTO scheme of things. Freedom of transit is another issue. They are at the mercy sometimes of the transit countries, the coastal neighbors. So Secretary General has been asked to put together a high-level panel to look into freedom of transit. So I believe that will also very good progress. So, and there are, of course, the other deliverables. So we hope that with that very robust program of action, and if we can ensure that the member states also keep at it, remain engaged, especially the partner countries and transit countries, we'll possibly keep the issues high on the UN's agenda. That's the purpose, that's the mandate of my office. My office actually supports the three groups of countries, the LLDCs, and the SIDS. And I will say that as the High Representative for these three groups, while the better known, recognized group, the SIDS are, but the LLDCs were not as well recognized. And I believe through the preparations of the
Would like to
substantive outcomes, adoption of a strong consensus-based Avaza political declaration, and endorsement of the Avaza program for 2024-2034 will clear priorities and implementation mechanism for LLDC. Inclusive participation, active engagement from all stakeholders, member states, UN entities, regional organizations, civil society, youth, and the private sector. The strengthening a dialogue across the forums, especially the connectivity tracks and high-level roundtables, will be a measure of inclusivity and relevance. Lasting partnership, establishment of new initiatives, regional corridors and development, partnerships that go beyond the conference, particularly in infrastructure, digitalization, trade, facilitation, and resilience. In short, we aim for LLDC3 to be remembered not only for high-level attendance and smooth organization, but for laying the groundwork for real impact in the decade ahead. Thank you.
Dulce, please.
From Paz Blue, thanks very much. I wanted to ask why Turkmenistan is the host for the conference this year, given that there were two other conferences on this topic that I believe didn't materialize. And also you talked about transport among the landlocked countries can be a problem. Can you give an example of, a landlocked developing country that is restricted in terms of, freedom of transit or transport? And in the LLDCs, who is sort of leading the way of those countries? And it seems like the African countries would have fairly dissimilar concerns from the Central Asian countries, unless you want to tell me otherwise. Thanks very much.
Say.
would like to take why
You will
Turkmenistan.
answer, yeah.
Right. Thank you very much, Dossier. And why Turkmenistan? Why not Turkmenistan? All right. Last year, like I said, these meetings are held, of course, in one of the landlocked countries. But the last one was held in Vienna. And that was not a landlocked country. It's a landlocked country, but not a landlocked developing country. So the D is missing. But they did it, as a very strong partner, as a landlocked country. They hosted the meeting. But I think there was a feeling that these meetings will have more sense and more relevance if they're held actually in one of the landlocked developing countries. Last year, as I said, initially it was Rwanda and then Botswana. Both of them offered, but then they had some unavoidable developments, and they asked for postponement, etc. And then as many as 13 countries, actually, there was a lot of political momentum generated around the conference. So as many as 13 countries, when Botswana had to ask for a postponement, as many as 13 countries offered to actually host, including a large number of African countries. But then Turkmenistan stepped forward. And after Africa, the largest concentration of landlocked developing countries is actually in Central Asia. So, it also made sense that it went there. And they had some very critical issues, which were, whether you talk about climate challenges or transit challenges and accessibility and all that. So Turkmenistan offered to host it, and I think the landlocked group very wholeheartedly welcomed that decision. So we are going to Turkmenistan and very much looking forward to that. And I would like to mention and recognize the extraordinary efforts being made by the Turkmen government to ensure the success of the conference. You mentioned about who takes the lead. Actually, the group, like I said, is 32 of them. So there is a regional grouping. It revolves the chairmanship. Right now, the last chair was Botswana, and Botswana's term had ended. So it was the term of the Gurulak was the next region, the Latin American region. And there are only two landlocked countries there, Bolivia and Paraguay. And so Bolivia offered to be the chair, and they were elected as the chair by the group. So they are the chair of the group. So there are, of course, many commonalities with regard to amongst the landlocked countries when it comes, lack of access, etc. But of course, there are distinct and unique challenges at each region. Even within Africa, as you rightly said, different parts of Africa within the landlocked group also have different challenges. And the political dimensions are, of course, also there. In terms of the biggest challenges with regard to transit and transport, the very fact that they're landlocked, they are at the mercy, as I said, of the coastal neighbors of the transit countries. And I think some of that came to the fore during the pandemic. During the pandemic, when all the borders were closed, especially, borders were closed, the landlocked countries did not have access to the port. And that had a serious impact on having access to their having access to items that they were importing. In some countries, there was even food security issues that had come. Supplies chains were disrupted seriously. So I think during the pandemic, it really, really became much more profound, the real challenges of the landlocked countries, and something must be done. And I remember, I will not mention the names. One of the permanent representative, one of the landlocked countries said that, there was an election taking place in a neighboring coastal country through which, of course, they get access to their products and shipments coming from that port. But that country was having an election. So a few weeks before the elections, they closed all borders. And they said that country X, closed borders because they were having election. And my country then started having a food security issue because all the trucks had piled up on the other side with the food supply. And we couldn't afford to, of course, fly in the food. So this is at the level where they can get the issues lie in terms of their vulnerability and dependence on the transit country. And that is why this is for the first time that in the program of action, they've actually now asked the Secretary General to set up a high-level panel to look into the whole issue about freedom of transit. Because according to the existing international conventions and treaties, the landlocked countries enjoy the same right as coastal states to many of the transit issues. But these are not better known or not better applied and practiced. So we are hoping that when the high-level panel is set up and they come up with the recommendations and submits it to the General Assembly, we can see perhaps some groundbreaking, real transformative changes taking place to where things are. And there are other many challenges. We're happy to share that with you separately, but I hope that many of you will be there in Awaza to see firsthand and listen firsthand to many of these issues and bring that news up here also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me continue. Yeah.
Please, Madam.
2 years as a member of the United Nations, Turkmenistan, as a neutral country, has forged a strong partnership with the United Nations, both through the UN Country Team and Regional Center for Preventive Diplomacy for Central Asia, which it has hosted in Ashgabat since 2007. We appreciate humanitarian assistance, including to the people of Afghanistan, that Turkmenistan has provided. Turkmenistan initiated 2 recent General Assembly resolutions on important topics affecting the region and beyond, strengthening connections between all modes of transport to achieve sustainable development goals, and the key role of reliable and stable energy connectivity in ensuring sustainable development. The resolution was adopted in December 2023. I also want to mention the 2022 General Assembly resolution declaring Central Asia as a zone of peace, trust, and cooperation. Upon the initiative of Turkmenistan and Turkmenistan's initiative reflected in the General Assembly resolution to declare 2025 International Year of Peace and Trust. This is our contribution, and I think we can host this kind of global conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. This concludes today's briefing. If you wish to have any other information, you can feel free to email me at yaqoobm@un.org. Thank you everyone. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this joint press briefing from the UN headquarters. My name is May Yaqoob, and I'm the head of advocacy and outreach at OHRLS, and I will be your moderator today. We are honored to have with us 2 distinguished speakers. Ms. Rabab Fatima, you are the Secretary General of LLDC3 conference and also USG and High Representative of the least developed country, landlocked developing country, to deliver her remark. Madam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, May. Good afternoon, distinguished members of the media, dear friends. I thank you for joining us today for the briefing on the upcoming 3rd United Nations Conference of the Landlocked Developing Countries that will be held in Awaza, Turkmenistan from the 5th to the 8th of August with a pre-conference day on the 4th of August. And the purpose of gathering here today is not only to share updates on the conference preparations, but also to put the spotlight on a group of 32 countries that are too often overlooked. The landlocked developing countries, the LLDCs, home to over 570 million people. Half of them are in Africa, and half of them are also LDCs. Their development challenges are profound and persistent, rooted in one unchangeable reality, that they have no direct access to the sea. And this isolation drives up for them, isolation from global markets, drives up trade costs by up to 74% and doubles exports times compared to their coastal neighbors, the coastal economies. And these countries, these 32 countries, despite making up 7% of the world's population, they only account for about 1.2% of the global merchandise trade and less than 1% of global exports. So in that context, the upcoming conference, the LLDC3, is a pivotal opportunity to reverse this trajectory. It offers a once-in-a-decade opportunity. These countries actually have their conference once in a decade to reshape the development part of LLDCs by mobilizing international support and partnerships and by placing their needs firmly on the global development agenda. The conference is expected to be truly inclusive, a multi-stakeholder event, bringing together heads of states and governments, ministers, parliamentarians, but also other stakeholders, the private sector, the civil society, youth, and of course, from the UN system and other regional and international organizations. The UN Secretary General will lead the UN delegation. He is, of course, it's a UN meeting, so he has sent out invitations for this. And he will be reaffirming the UN system's full commitment to the LLDC agenda. The President of the General Assembly, the President of ECOSOC, among others, will also be participating. The conference is anchored in the AWASA Program of Action, bold and forward-looking blueprint for the decade 2024 to 2034, and which was adopted by consensus by the General Assembly in December. It identifies the key strategic areas of the LLDCs, and I will not go into them because I think in the interest of time, but I think we have provided folders with details. And these 5 priority areas have been translated into action, and for that, the Program of Action also identifies 5 flagship deliverables for the LLDCs, and these include regional agricultural research hubs, infrastructure investment finance facilities. The infrastructure investment gap is huge, running into trillions for them. The UN Secretary General's high-level panel on freedom of transit. Again, transit is a big issue for them, so Secretary General has been asked to set up a high-level panel. A dedicated work program under the auspices of the WTO, and a formal negotiating body under the UNFCCC. And I'm very happy to report to you that, this process has already been completed. They have all applied, and the LLDCs, for the first time, they will be going into the next COP as a negotiating body like the other vulnerable groups of countries. Allow me also now to share some of the key highlights of the program of the conference. There will be, of course, plenary sessions, the intergovernmental track. That's not only the plenary sessions, but there will be 5 high-level parallel roundtables that will be taking place on 5 thematic areas centered around the 5 strategic, the priorities of the LLDCs.